Absolutely, no, it is the opposite.
But I think Bill's always been about voting. You guys want to introduce?
Sure.
No.
Not really. So I'm Oisa.
I'm Mildred.
And we work collaboratively with each other. We do this project called the Brooklyn High Art Machine. For about 6 years now, every summer we've been going outside and making art with our neighbors and doing public installations. Jen and Bill contacted us and told us about the MONTH2MONTH project and asked us if we would like to do something. And we had this meeting. It was a lot of fun. We did a lot of thinking. And came up with Gentrifiers Anonymous. We felt that it would be a good idea to give people the opportunity to come to a space where they can feel comfortable to talk about gentrification, not in a way where, I guess, like, it's not judgment-free, because people should feel free to judge other people on their gentrification or other issues, but we just wanted people to feel like there was a space to come and talk about it. So we welcome everyone who's here to just tell your story, any story that's personal to you about whether you've been gentrified or you feel like a gentrifier, maybe what your definition of it is, or anything that you do with that.
Yeah, so it's something that regardless of what side of it you feel that you're on, or we're all on some kind of spectrum, we did just want to create a space where we could just talk about it, talk about how we're implicated, talk about how it bothers us, talk about how we love it, or whatever it is you want to say. And like I said, it is to encourage everyone to tell a story. What we're going to do, because there's so many of you, we're so happy there's so many of you, we weren't sure how many people would actually be interested when we put up the ad. We're like, who's going to want to come and talk about this? Yeah. So it's good to see all of you, but we will set a timer, a time limit, maybe 4 minutes per story. We won't shut you down in your story, but hopefully you don't think about stuff. 2 minutes. A 2-minute timer. Well, she knows more about this, so I'll trust her. So it's really whoever would like to speak can start.
And I just wanted to say I'm with WNYC. My name is Jessica Bowles. I'm a reporter. We're doing some stories on arts and affordability and gentrification. I am hoping to use some sound from this for an upcoming story on that topic. But if you're not comfortable and I come over, just say, I would prefer not to be recorded.
I can start.
Yes.
So, hi, my name is Mildred, and I'm a gentrifier. I think the first step is admitting you have a problem. I'm a native New Yorker, but I, like many people, I guess, went away to college. When I came back, I couldn't live in the neighborhood I'd grown up in, which was over on 103rd. It's called Manhattan Valley, adjacent to the Upper West Side. And so I, being a young person and artist, I moved to Williamsburg because that seemed fun at the time. And I didn't think too much of it. I didn't really understand what had been happening in the city while I was away, so I just moved back. And I found what seemed to me like a great deal with a roommate in an apartment on the south side of Williamsburg. The south side was more than it is now, a Dominican and Puerto Rican neighborhood. I'm Dominican, so I felt happy that I could be part of this community. And I was friendly with my neighbors, but it's kind of out drinking. I had a very busy life, and other people who lived in my building. Then one day I saw that there was a tenants meeting, so I said, "Oh, I should go. This will be a good way to meet the neighbors." So I put into the meeting, and I kind of listening, and as the meeting goes on, I realized that the meeting was them, the other people in the building, figuring out how to protect themselves from people like me, who were moving into the building, whose rents, I found out that my rent was like double what everybody else's rent was. My apartment had been renovated, and it was an interesting experience to sort of see myself in that light. So I was coming in all cool, and then realizing that I was making it unlivable for the rest of the people in the building.
I feel like I saw stuff.
Although, because I have a really bad one. And I feel like bringing you guys up to confess your gentrifying sins, because this is horrible. So, I moved to Bushwick. I'm Marissa. I'm a gentrifier. I moved to Bushwick in 2007. And I lived right on Ray Hernandez Park. And the ice cream shops would come and park there all day, every day. And I went crazy. And I called 311 on them constantly. And I realized that I'm controlling the culture of the neighborhood and asking it to change for me. And that's not okay, but I did it. It was mine. That's not okay.
I guess I'm on both sides of the fence. I live in Flushing, Queens currently, and I'm on the edge of Whitestone and Flushing, and it was an all-residential neighborhood. And so about 10 years ago, when it changed into commercial residential, and all of these factories and industrials, people came in and started building buildings. Now, I live in my great-great-great-grandmother's home, and it was built in 18-something. And they want to buy the house now, but they changed the entire neighborhood. And now my family is trying to find a way to keep that house up and running because the land tax and everything shot up because of all of these companies. So we're just one house and we're taking in all this pollution, and it's a different type of gentrification on their part. Now I'm looking for an apartment, and I want to live in either Harlem or Brooklyn. And everywhere I go, that I want to live, they're like, no, you're not allowed. Because you're going to bring a Starbucks with you. You're going to bring a Dwayne Reed with you. And so I'm kind of like on both sides of the fence and kind of torn because I want somewhere where there's beautiful culture that won't be taken away. But at the same time, I know I'm coming with. I'm going to be bringing alongside me this hipster movement, so to speak, in there.
I'm Taylor. I'm a gentrifier as well. And well, my story is about this neighborhood actually. I moved in Chelsea in 1990, and at the time, Chelsea was a very different neighborhood. And my next door neighbor was a garage that repaired garbage trucks, which I didn't realize because I went to see the apartment on January night. And when, the first time that the sun came out, I realized that it was not perfect. But, so I lived there for a few years, and actually I was very happy inside the garbage truck. And until one day, a gallery opened in, just a block from my apartment. And I was incredibly happy because I said, oh my gosh, the galleries are coming for me. They're coming to my neighborhood. They know I'm interested and are coming. and then the second one opened, and then the third one. And so after a while, I started seeing the neighborhood change completely. And all the spaces, all the garage, all the spaces that I've known started closing down, and galleries were more and more, which was interesting, and I loved it, and I went every chance I got. But also after 5 years, I was surprised out on my own apartment, so I had to leave. But anyway, so that was the story of the brief moment of joy. The gallery opened. New York from Indiana in the mid-80s, and we bought an apartment and started that bed in 1989. And we were so excited. It was a converted loft, and we were the first people to live in this converted loft building around the first 100 years. And then I got to realize that all the other lofts in our area were inhabited by artists who were putting up big white signs in their windows that they, if they lived there, they would be forced out of their buildings. So now I'm on the board of the nonprofit arts organization to try to make up for that. But it was really incredible to live in here back in '89, and you know, no Soul Cycle and no Whole Foods and no Greenery. Now, of course,
I'm Jessica, and I'm a gentrifier. I moved my husband bought a place in near Flatbush a year and a half ago. It's a really diverse neighborhood. It always has been. But I think the concern is that it's becoming less diverse as a result of people like us. And you're in the West Indian way, and a few blocks where I live, although elsewhere it's otherwise. And I conflicted because I care deeply about the issue of equity and people being able to afford to live in the neighborhood, and doing a lot of reporting on my neighbors being pushed out of their apartments by predatory landlords. At the same time, I get excited when a new hipster restaurant opens with fun food, and I sometimes hope that there are more. So my name is Jean James, and I am a gentrifier. And I feel I have kind of two sides of the story myself. I live here in Chelsea, and I guess the confession side would be something that is a cloud of denial. I started to lift on Thursday, or Friday, and got solidified separately by someone on my team, my staff, who was here today, helping us get ready for this event. And it's laughable, but not, because the crowd lifted to realize that I have a little pub, and there's a lot of them in Chelsea. There's a lot of designers in Chelsea. And yes, she does puppy daycare, and a really cool place on night. It used to be a hardware store, and I buy her food. I buy her organic raw food at a very adorable boutique store down on 90. That also was just a pizza place. So you realize it sounds silly, and it's kind of being funny on some level, but not. That, you know, my pub is pretty good life in the neighborhood like Chelsea is, you know, full of paradise. Really serious craft issues and projects. And something about it, and I haven't worked through it yet, is revealing the gentrifier in me that I think I'm on the liberal side of the conversation, and you know, recovery coming. The other side of the story is that I'm in a co-op, and I really am working class. I feel in Chelsea. I own my own business, and I've, you know, had a rent increase 3 times, triple overnight, and I really couldn't afford the life I lived in Chelsea. I think I don't think I qualified. So the issue for me is qualification, and in the 15 years I've lived here, I don't qualify for the life I occupy. So, for example, even in my own co-op, we have quite an argument going on the last year and a half about raising the standards of who could own the building. Having $150,000 was what I have in reserve, and now they want $500,000, and you know, they want a certain level of income, and all these things that none of us probably would qualify for. And we see ourselves as very liberal buildings, or the people in the building have been here since the 70s, and it's because they think it's the responsible thing to do now, to do these things and change these things, because this is what it looks like to be responsible, you know, in an area like Chelsea. So, you know, it's becoming increasingly difficult to even qualify, you know, if you have to do it now. The reverse is also more legalized. I
business owners, they want you to have really high credentials and 3 years of consistency, so really doing a lot of things. If you think about it, like Chelsea, full of small business owners, and you don't have a lot of consistency, but they've had businesses for 20 years, which is great, a lot of stability. So I feel like we're all affected, we're all part of it, we're all co-creating these sides, and we can co-create together. There has to be, we can co-uncreate.
So,
So, I've just been taking some notes to get as people speak. I think, first of all, to assume that people who live in neighborhoods don't want galleries is pretty privileged way of thinking about things, and it's sort of like assuming that people who lived there before don't want better food or they don't want these things. First of all, it should not think that way. Second of all is talking about farm to table and good food and all that kind of stuff. I think that feeds into the capitalist system, which is completely fucked up, and it's like actually what is ruining everybody. And that's the bigger question I feel like here, because all of us here can sit here and say we don't want this or we don't want gentrification to happen, but I don't think anybody here is actually really ready to give up the comfort that they have around them all the time. I think that that's the bigger issue when these conversations happen. Is like, are you actually ready to like, can you grow your own food? Do you even know who your neighbors are? Because a lot of people who talk about gentrification don't talk to their neighbors, and a lot of people who are not considered gentrifiers are thieves, and they charge people. And I know from experience, like people who work in apartment buildings who have access to being able to charge more rent, they're not gentrifiers. They're basically paying into the capitalist system that like they're stealing from the same people who are like struggling. And so like for me, like these conversations never go beyond like this stupid dog or stupid coffee shop. Like who cares about that? Like we should be talking about bigger issues because it's those issues that are bringing on these like huge problems. And, I mean that's all I want to say. Yeah, I'm a gentrifier. Like I go to the special grocery store and whatever, but I think we should talk about bigger issues, not just about like buying local food or whatever. It seems like that's such surface stuff.
I'm happy to try to piggyback on that. I'm Bill. I'm a gentrifier. A couple of years ago, in 2013, a friend of mine, Valentine, posted on Facebook that he was tired of seeing his friends priced out of Bushwick and losing their studios, and kind of wanted to organize a meeting to get artists together to talk about it. And so he agreed to host it at his studio space, which he's fortunate enough to own. Probably 70 to 100 artists showed up, very eager to talk about some solutions to the kind of like workspace crisis that was happening because we gentrified ourselves out of our own work area, And the thing was, the meetings went on. There was a lot of questions about what the problems were. Not a lot of clarity among the artists that they were contributing to it or what solutions might be had. But none of it really matters because, like, the day after our meeting, we found out that there was a city council meeting about the Rhinegold rezoning that was happening, where they're going to build, like 2,000, luxury units, and any affordable apartments that were attached to it went away when the developer sold the rights to another developer. So all the agreements that were made were just tossed out the window. So by that time, I showed up at there was a protest and a rally to fight, push back against that. And the lawyer for the new developer called and wanted to talk, about putting some of those things back into the development plan. But it just pointed out sort of like a group of 100 largely white artists coming together to talk about a problem were not contributing in any sort of meaningful way to, addressing the larger issue and what the developers were doing, or how city council works, or how rezoning works. So, that's something I've learned, as an artist in New York. You have to get involved in the political side of things if you want it to change
My name is Lonnie. I'm actually living here right now for the next couple of days. But I live in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. Oh, sorry, I'm Lonnie and Jennifer. Okay. I'm actually born and raised in New York City, but in Manhattan, on East 65th Street, and in like a doorman building, where my parents live in a rent stabilized apartment and have been for the past like 40 years. 40 years. But I went off to college, and then when I came back from college, I didn't want to live with my parents, and the only place I could afford was in Bushwick. Well, actually, no, I lived in downtown, but then moved to Bushwick eventually, and was always really, really interested in music scene. I play music myself, but also I was interested in kind of creating community amongst that, and now I work at Silent Barn, which is how I met Larissa, and became the calendar manager there. And Silent Barn is a space in Bushwick that hosts shows every single night, but also hosts like workshops and classes for the community, and really try to reach out and do all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, it is a place in Bushwick, and because it's there, people want to live near it. And the rents have, since we moved in maybe 3 years ago, skyrocketed. But they were skyrocketing already, so it's hard to say, even though we have community classes and we try to really, be political about rent in the neighborhood, and we actually host workshops and like rallies and that kind of stuff, and we host them, we let people kind of stay there and talk about these kinds of things. It's still a space where people want to live nearby, and people can, and the rents of because of that.
I'll go next. I moved to Brooklyn about 3 years ago from upstate New York. And ever since moving here, I have found it really hard to empathize with my neighbors because of my difference in socioeconomic background. And I think it's hard when you come in from a different environment to New York because you're really trying to focus on how to survive and how to live off your means. And at the same time, you kind of have to learn how to empathize with other people who are doing the same thing but come from a different place. And so I think it's a challenge as a gentrifier myself to learn how to empathize with people coming from a different background.
My relationship, I should say, my name is Seth, and I'm actually a staff writer, and I've written about the issue of gentrification, sort of tangential, talking about what's happening in the South Bronx. So my relationship with gentrification is complicated because my father is actually a New York landlord. I don't have a relationship with him anymore, but he's someone who owns a few properties. So I grew up rather middle class in a private school and all that. And I find that my desires for where I live are pretty middle class, they're pretty bourgeois. And that's something I want to do, and actually just talk about this, which is something I'm looking at the women, I realized I'm the only black man here. And I thought, oh, wow, I wonder what kind of point of view I might be expected to represent, or how I might complicate that. I'm just telling you what my experience is. I grew up middle class. And so having moved away from, I'm not from New York, I should say, I'm from Jamaica. And that kind of comes with a whole cultural set of language. But I moved away, and I lived in LA, I lived in London, I came back to New York, and I'm actually benefiting from policies that are specifically geared towards making living affordable. I live in a rent stabilized apartment, not making to rent stabilized. And what I pay for my studio apartment is damn good. Like it's under $1,000 score.
And the thing is, when I got back from London, I lived with my friend on the West Side, and I think that there's a kind of Goldilocks kind of neighborhood there, in that it's neither too gentrified nor so sort of what I would call basic, that you can't get decent food, that you can't get a quiet place to do the work that I need to do. That said, I see what's happening in the South Bronx and it makes me deeply uncomfortable. I think that my place in the discourse, and I do want to address these larger issues of overpopulation, of the economy being skewed towards one percent. I try to do that in my writing because I think you have to bring the fucking argument, or you're just going to get nowhere every day. So that's my sort of the place where I think I can contribute. And I want to say also that being in the South Bronx now and walking through a neighborhood where there are people on the street literally high to the point they can't function before noon. Like that's disturbing me. So I feel pulled in a couple of different directions, and I do value a certain kind of gentrification. I do. I actually want it, but also recognize that with that, the caveat is that at least where I am in my life right now, I'm probably going to get priced out of where I live. So I'm on the horns of the dilemma, and I'm not sure. I know that the least I can do is talk about this and be analytical about this in the ways that I can do. And I think that being attending this meeting is one of the ways to do this.
I grew up in Queens. My name is Leanne. I grew up in Queens. I guess in class with you, and I also went to like sort of like a private public school, which meant that I hung out with kids who were like middle class or more. And yeah, so I guess what I'm doing, and then I went to Columbia, which is really gentrified. And so I guess, and then after I graduated, recently, I moved to Far Rockaway, and I started taking PA training, really far out. And I started realizing that all my life I've been in this bubble in New York. And I started seeing people that I just hadn't really seen in New York in engagement. And I actually really love it. Like, I noticed that like all the hipsters get off like around this time. And then like usually like I'm the only left sitting on the train. Going to Far Rockaway. And this one time really happened. When this dude came on carrying like 2 shopping bags with perfumes. And he was like, listen up everyone, like, I'm selling these perfumes. Like, you know, like, people who sell something would never sell anything, right? But he was like charismatic, he was funny. He was a rapper. So he would like rhyme all of his lines and make all these clever combinations. It was amazing. And people like really started laughing, just like clicking with him. And he like sold whatever. And he was like, ladies, like, how are you gonna make money with last year's perfume? How are you gonna get a young guy like me who makes $1,000 a day? And everyone was like, ha, and they started flirting with him. Anyway, I thought this was amazing. I was fascinated by him. But then he got really political. He said, how are you gonna buy something at Macy's when you go home and your paycheck every 2 weeks is only $600? Macy's is the other. Don't buy from the other. Buy from your brother. Buy from someone who looks like you. And
realized at this point that she wasn't talking to me. He was talking to the other people on the train. And they understood him, and they bought from him. And, I mean, that was beautiful. And I was happy that I got to see that.
Did you buy the perfume?
You know, I don't really use perfume. And also, if I bought perfume, it would probably be from Sephora. Perfume.
I'll share my story. So my name is Zach, and I'm not sure if I'm a gentrifier or if I if I am, I don't think I'm a bad one, whatever that means. And I think I want to fundamentally question if it is bad in and of itself, similar to what Seth was saying. And my story is actually really similar to Lonnie's. I'm also from the Upper East Side. Born and raised, I went to high school in the Bronx, which is a very hour-long trip every day. It's a very different world from where I live. And now I live in Bed-Stuy. I lived there for 3 years. I'm also in music. I play piano. And I'm classically trained. When I first moved, I would get really pissed off because my piano would be in the window, and I would play my Chopin, my Debussy, and it would get all corrupt by the blaring music of the street. Corrupt. Well, that's how I approached it at first. Right? That's the word that I would use at that time, and I felt bad about how angry I was getting because they were there first, and I brought my own music sensibility and the quietude that I was used to on the Upper East Side, and had these expectations that just it made me angry. And then after a while, I kind of started to like it. It was kind of like they were like remixing my music. And it was I kind of started to play with some of the beats and gravitate more towards jazz. and one day, this guy was calling up to me. I live on the power floor. And he's calling up to me, and I kind of just ignored him because I thought it was asking me to stop or something. And turns out he was actually from the church down the street, and he approached me about being the organist in the church. They had an opening. And I was like, well, I'm a dude from the Upper East Side. I don't belong playing organ in the church. But I was like, I went and I met the congregation, and it was amazing. And they were having a barbecue that day, and I was like the only white person. And I was like, wow, maybe I should do this. But I felt weird because I felt like maybe I was doing it for the wrong reasons. Maybe I was doing it out of some weird curiosity as this white guy coming into this weird community. Not weird community, but this foreign community. It's foreign to me. And before I even got to decide whether or not to play, the church shut down, and it was replaced by a deli, not a bodega, but a deli, like a nice deli. Upper East Side, well, we bodegas. And I don't know. I don't think I'm responsible for that deli coming into the but I don't know. And I think that I do have my remix with the neighborhood, and we do have one for, and I'm affectionately called the piano man by my neighbors. So I don't know if gentrifying is bad. I don't think I'm a gentrifier. I'm trying not to be, and maybe I went in there thinking I was automatically because I was this middle-class kid moving into this middle-class neighborhood, but pans out.
So what do you think would make you a gentrifier? What do you think you're doing different that makes you not one?
Well, I think the guy who gave me his name, it's like getting to know your neighbors, for example. I've gotten to know my neighbors. I hang out with them. I buy weed from the guy down the street. And I met those people in the church, and I wouldn't. I was scared about it, frankly. I was scared about going to meet the congregation, but I got out and I did it, and I thought, I try to feel good about it, but not in like a righteous kind of way, like, oh, I'm taking this on, but like, you know, that's what you should do.
Right.
You know, you should get an opportunity by the community, and you should explore it because you're there to be part of the improvement of the community.
Yes. Oh, okay. My name's RJ. I'm a gentrifier. The neighborhood I currently live in, I think I first moved there in 2003 on Franklin Avenue, between Dean and Bergen. At the time, now I live on Lincoln between Franklin and Classen. This neighborhood's been written a lot about lately, gentrified really rapidly. I've seen so much change since 2003. And I think what I'm noticing kind of in this conversation for myself is I'm noticing, and I'm noticing the stories that I tell myself about my story that kind of make it okay or make it less gentrified, you know. So I think about like, I'm an activist, and I'm work around, you know, prison abolition, doing work to support organizations that are fighting gentrification in the neighborhoods. And then the other stories we tell. Oh, my parents lived here, and my grandparents lived here. And I have all those stories and stories about myself. But I think the thing I'm noticing is that like none of the stories really get rid of this sense that I have. I'm still identified. And I when I kind of dig down deep into it, it's like I feel like there's layers and layers of displacement, right, from the land that we're on. And so I kind of always think about that. And I think if I'm really going to deal with that, with both an internal state and like the political world state, I think the only thing that would really turn the tide for me internally would be if there was a real reckoning in this country, on this land, both around colonialism and around slavery, and around other forms of exploitation of people. I think that's really the only thing that would change that for me. And that's kind of what I'm left with.
I'm Don, and I don't really know if I'm gentrifier either. I'm from Canada, so I guess I can't. I like your hat, by the way. So we live downtown in the financial district, and we moved there because there's a tax. They gave huge tax breaks, and all was living there after 9/11, and so it was actually a very good deal at the time. And now all these massive buildings are coming up all around us, and we have a pretty nice building, but now these massive buildings are coming up, and all these Starbucks, and I don't drink coffee, I don't want any of those things in my neighborhood. And I like the pizza place, I like the shoe people, I like all that. I like the stores the way they are, and I don't want them to change. And the local pub, I always go to I don't go to these upscale places, so I don't know. I mean, yeah, I have more money than, I don't think my entrance into this neighborhood has changed the neighborhood. The neighborhood was like that. It was all a bunch of empty buildings, and the financial people were down there, and I don't know. I mean, I guess there's a gentrification aspect to it, that there's empty buildings there, and there's rents, and they gave a tax break, and so we moved down there. And I don't want the neighborhood to change. I would like Starbucks to vanish off the face of the earth, personally, but and I don't really care about farm to table. I go, and people really like it, but I'm really happy to have Rosella's pizza and eat cheap sushi and all that stuff. That's the stuff I like, and I'm losing it. So maybe I'm responsible for it leaving. I hope not.
My name is Gloria, and I live in Harlem. My neighborhood is in Gentrified, and near West Palm, by the city. And there's a lot of white people in the neighborhood, and so a lot of small businesses on North Saturday, and 150th Street, and things like the state.
funny that, I'm sorry, none of them are, wait, are we going with this and then we can talk?
You go ahead, go for it.
Okay. I think it's funny I only hear about Brooklyn and Harlem. Me being from Queens is a very interesting type of education because a lot of people are only talking about Long Island City and Astoria because it's on the waterfront and it's becoming chic. But my family's from Astoria projects and they literally gated off the entire Astoria projects and all of Queensbridge just so people can feel comfortable running along the waterfront from their piano factory walks. And when I'm sitting on the train, me being a brown person, there are a lot of Korean and Asian and Chinese people that look at me like I don't belong when my family's always been there. And I know that they're one of the reasons that really skyrocketed is because a lot of people moved from Asia and they're willing to pay that rate to be in that community, to feel that type of culture that's there. But there are new businesses that have moved there, took away the cobble, took away the dry cleaner that I always went to and my family always went to. So it's not just Brooklyn and Harlem, it's also Jamaica Queens and Flushing and Astoria and Elmhurst and places like 74th Street and Roosevelt where you literally feel like you're in Ecuador on one block and then the next block you feel like you're in Mexico and it's absolutely beautiful. And slowly but surely it's happening everywhere. So to piggyback what Anonymous said and this gentleman said, it's such a bigger issue and it's happening everywhere. It's not just happening in those two boroughs.
My name is Elisa, and I grew up in East Elmhurst and Jackson Heights, Queens. The neighborhood I lived in Jackson Heights, Queens was predominantly white, mostly Irish and Greek. I myself and my brother were probably the only black people in about 10 block radius. I could not get out of there fast enough. There was an incident, I remember my brother was probably about 19 or 20 years old, and another two black people happened to run down the block, one chasing the other, one of them possibly having a gun, and the neighbors had the nerve to come to our door and ask if we knew them. This is New York City. All black people don't know each other. And with that, I could not get out fast enough. When I was 19, I decided that I was going to move to the Caribbean neighborhood. My family was from Trinidad, and I wanted to be around people who would not judge me in that way. I moved to Crown Heights, Brooklyn, about a month after Mildred. We lived in some building, and I happened to bring my white friend with me as my roommate, not really thinking it would be an issue because I was happy to be there. People were obviously annoyed once they found out that I was Trinidadian. They were a little less annoyed with me, and I slowly but surely got to know my neighbors a little bit better, and also got to understand more of, I guess. I mean, when I moved to Crown Heights, this was 17 years ago, and it was not like it is today. What I've seen happening is just it's night and day. I was a single mom for a long time. I had 2 small children, and I remember one morning. Sorry, I was running late to drop them off at the fair to go to work, and thank God I was late that morning. Someone was shot right in front of my building about 5 minutes before we were ready to leave, and had we left in time, he might have gotten caught in the crosshairs of that. And I remember I called 911, and the detective who followed up with me afterwards was like, oh, like, see, blah, 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 and just had that, and I was like, I didn't really see anything, like, I'm really shook, like, I feel like I shouldn't leave it, I shouldn't live here anymore, like, I don't know where to go, and he's like, oh, we're cleaning up the neighborhood, don't worry about it, we need good people to stay, it'll be fine in a few years, just watch and see what happens. And I was just kind of like, what? Like, I didn't get it, but then years later, I get it. Like, and going back to what Anonymous was saying, is like, I'm actually married to Anonymous. But it's like this issue of gentrification or development of these neighborhoods to make it's so much bigger than the coffee shops and the gourmet potato chips and the whatever, the really trendy dive bars. Like these are I get it. These are all signifiers and symbols of the development of the things that are made for a certain type of people. But it's so much more than that. And it doesn't have to we don't have to go along with this. Like we can become more active in our communities. We can get to know our neighbors and stick our necks out because more than likely we are more alike than we are different. Because we're human beings and there's gotta be a way to relate to other people regardless of how different they are. And I also think it's really important to desegregate. I think that we're extremely segregated and I think that there's this line obviously, there's this, where honestly gentrification where I was like, oh, I feel okay, my kids play from the building now. This is great. But then there's also this anxiety of oh my god, we're gonna lose this. They're improving the neighborhood, but it's not for us. And I think that that's where a lot of the anxiety from older residents comes from. And then their newer residents are coming in and they're so fucking oblivious to everything. There's this bodega, or it was a bodega at the corner of our block, where I can't tell you how many people died at that corner. And now it's this Caribbean restaurant owned by this white Jewish guy who it was some other kind of restaurant, and then he went to Jamaica and smoked a lot of weed and had an epiphany that he was going to make Caribbean food to honor the community that was there. And it's just it's so ridiculous. It's so fucking stupid. I'm so over it. I want people to talk and organize and do something to get involved in local politics. Talk to people. It's ridiculous. Stop going to the bar and hanging out with everybody that looks like you. Talk to the guy that you pass every day and you don't say anything, or where you feel the crazy guy. The crazy guy that does the laughing guy. Talk to the crazy person. What the fuck? This is New York. Go out there and meet people that don't look and act like you, and find some sort of commonality.
You don't even have to try to find it. It's the funny part is that it's there.
Yeah,
to the point where I saw a group of kids fighting, and they weren't really fighting intensely. They were 9 and 10, and their pants were sagging, all different ethnicities. And I saw them, and they were cursing, and it was an elder woman passing. And I said, "How dare you? How dare you curse in front of this woman? If your mother was here right now, what would she think?" All of them just went, "All right, and pulled their pants up, and they stopped, and they knew the source of where that was coming from. It was coming from love, and it was coming from a sense of community. So, granted, he was Indian, one was Asian, and the people was black. They all knew that. All right, she means good. So there is that common ground. You don't have to look for it; it's there.
I just before the discussion, I just wanted to check in, see if there's other people. I do want us to have the space to talk to each other, but I just wanted to make a little room, see if anybody else wanted to share.
Well, I'll
Sorry.
share a story that has to do with building up to the point also. So I'll be anonymous too, but I'm a gentrifier. And your story made me remember a story from a few days ago. I was walking home, and we have a few different buildings that connect to each other. And I was walking home from work, and passing the first one, there were a lot of young black boys from the buildings playing in front of the first building. And I was walking behind, a young person coming home from work probably as well. And I noticed that, I've seen them, I've lived in the building for 20
started seeing them kind of grow from young, like baby voice to bigger voice, and I saw this person, hold her purse a little bit closer, and then cross the street. And they're probably not even, they're definitely younger than 12, right? Or no, 12 to 14, but anyway, they seem like babies to me still. And so I just paused for a moment and I thought, wow, like I couldn't imagine what she was seeing, and then I just, kind of knew what she was seeing. And it terrified me, because this is also kind of the mass perception situation that becomes kind of weird. And just again, these really young kids who can their lives working on that side of the building. Yeah.
Did you say anything to her?
She was ahead of me, and I thought about it, and I guess that's part of kind of my question around the discussion is what could we say in a moment like that, or what could I have said in a moment like that?
Can
Sure.
I say an answer? So, this happened to me, this must have been, it was in Chelsea, actually. And I was walking to go somewhere. I had an appointment. And I was walking behind a white woman who kept looking over my shoulder. Not obsessively, but enough that I knew it could be the signals that she was uncomfortable. Because we were going in the same direction for a while. Or the same idea to it for a while. And then she made as if to turn away and do something. And clearly she just wanted to get behind me. And she did, and I almost knew this, because I just I turned around and I said to her, hey, I noticed that you responded to me, ostensibly following me, by turning away thinking that I was following you. And I contended, I'm not. I think I said, I'm going to this particular place. And she said, well, no, I'm not really, that didn't really happen. And then she let the wall down a little bit. And she said, well, I'm a woman and by myself, and it happens a lot that you get stalked by guys. And it's not you, it's just a situation. It's okay, yeah, I understand. I can get that. But just so you know, when you do have that kind of response to someone who looks like you, every once in a while, sometimes there's going to be a person like me who is a little bit more hurt than you realize. Right? Like it takes a little bit off you. Like it takes a teeny bit. I don't know if I went this far, but I said, it takes, and I can say it to you now, that it takes a little bit of my humanity. And it's gut bites, right? It's not like I lose a whole chunk of myself in that interaction, but little by little. Like it makes me a little bit more jaded, a little bit harder, a little bit. I have less faith in that commonality. So, I think it's really incumbent on us in those moments, small moments where politics come to the surface.
Yeah.
That we speak to them.
No, definitely. But I did want to kind of go and yell at her, and then I held myself back because I didn't. Right? I was kind of thinking about kind of what could that intention be. That would not be kind of like, why the fuck did you cross the street? And
Well, what's wrong with saying that?
Well, I don't know that it would have. I don't know that it would have.
Are we making the assumption here it's because he's black? That we're saying?
Yeah, I assume
because
that she
when I'm
crossed
walking-
the street because there were some black boys that she understood to be potentially threatening to her.
And just what did she look like?
She was a white woman. Young
But
white woman.
to follow in your story, when I'm late at night or whatever, in the evening, it's a quiet street, and there's a woman in front of me, I always cross the street. I never want to walk behind a woman because I'm a big guy. I'm a white guy. I think I'm kidding, as I said, and I think I'm a nice guy, but I think women on their own, I don't like doing that because I think it's unfair to them because there's a lot of. I don't think it's a. From my point of view, it's not a race
But
thing.
it wasn't an empty street.
Well, yeah.
It was that I sensed a different change in, a language, change in kind of holding the person, and then kind of all across the industry. This could be in my imagination, and again, I think that's the hard thing about racism, right? We can all be imagining race, but it is.
I don't. Well, there's.
But I know. I mean, I guess I was being a little sarcastic. I
I
was
mean,
trying to
there's
say we're not
things around
imagining.
racism that we can say we're imagine, but I know there's things that you know. You're a person that is on the margins of society. When you are oppressed, you know.
Yeah, I mean, did
It's
James Baldwin have some line to say you can be always accused of imagining racism, but it does exist.
Yeah,
and ask
it's
anybody
real.
who
And I
is.
also think it's easy for you to say that that's not that you don't think that that's a race thing or have anything to do with race.
If it's
I know I know that it does. Like I know that it does because I know that it happens more to black and brown men or men of color than it does to white males. And I see the way women, like other women, whether they be white women or other women of color, the way they respond to black and brown males is very different than how they respond to a white male. White men have the privilege of this double unconsciousness where they get to exist as themselves in this world, and everyone has to accept their perception of who they are, as where people of color have the burden of
Proving it.
two identities. Who they are, who they know they are, and then who they have to assume everyone thinks they are. And that understanding, having that knowledge is what that is. That is a knowledge that a white male cannot have and cannot understand. So you can say that you don't think it's a race thing because you can't understand it, because you don't have that
Lived experience.
yeah, you don't have that.
I agree. Can I share one story, just in
But I
terms
don't
of
think
being
it's
an artist?
perception.
It related to this, like, I taught public high school for 14 and a half years, and I was always like the only white guy in the room with black and brown students from Caribbean, students from, many different places, but we started a small school that was located near Pratt, and our students had this they had to run a gauntlet to get out of school. When they left, they had to walk by Lafayette Garden Houses, and for a year we had to escort the students to the train because they would get attacked by students or kids who were living in the housing project. So our kids who were in school, doing the right thing, were getting assaulted basically, and it was right across the street from Lafayette Garden Houses, the police station, and the cops just sat and watched. They didn't do anything, and so that was bad, but it kind of went away. Given enough time, there was sort of truce, and our kids could go. But a group of boys walked through the Pratt campus, right, the liberal art, whatever school, and they were walking through, and security guard stopped them and demanded their identification, and they're like, we're students from this. And suddenly that was backtalk, and they were arrested, dragged into that same precinct, and held overnight in jail for walking through a campus because they were brown kids. And these are the best kids, amazing students. And the fact that they had to deal with anger and hatred and racism from both sides, from white people in the institution and then their own community, because they weren't from that neighborhood. That kind of local bullshit. And it was so awful to see. But that was the daily existence of my students who had to cross lines in the city, cross many lines. And yeah, I mean, it's something that as a white man you don't necessarily have to think about, but when I first started teaching in Bushwick in 1999, walking to the school, I was like, I can do this because I'm a white guy. I'm not going to get attacked or assaulted because I'm a white guy and I'm an anomaly right now. One of my students used to say, "Yo, mister, you got brass knuckles? You got a knife? You got a gun?" And I was like, "No, dude, I'm a white guy." Fast forward, almost a decade later, Bushwick doesn't look anything like that. So I'm just, I know.
RJ, I just want to say what you said about how you need that really structural address to be made to systems of exploitation, essentially, right? They get racialized, they get gendered, really that's I think that's actually at the root of the issue of gentrification, because essentially what it is a class of people, right? It's a class of people coming into a geographic space and saying, we want to make this look like ourselves. We don't care who else is here. And we will use the mechanisms of state government, privatized capital, of social policy to make it so. It is about dominance. It is about supremacy. And I think people in this room right here, because from what I can tell, at least, we're interested in saying, in interviewing them.
I was just gonna say, I think that there's kind of the individual acts, and we talked about that. I think we would interrupt kind of what goes on in terms of kind of racism and exploitation at a local kind of at a very local level in their daily interactions. And then there's really amazing efforts being put forth by groups like Picture the Homeless that have kind of gone throughout the city and said there's more than enough space to house everybody and to have affordable housing, that there are really alternatives. So we're not like these victims to this big structure where it's like, oh, we don't control it, but we are just part of it, so it just has to go on and we have no other option, right? It's not this, capitalism is a big monster, but we can make and create alternatives, and there's groups working to do that right now.
I would say, I add to that, and the point was more too about, community in general, and just working with, I call it entrepreneurial community, just in the community. So models that are not business driven, they have the same skills and ideas and creativity and being entrepreneurial. And, I think part of it is also just being wise sometimes to not be sure that you have anywhere to live, right? Or on street live, or live with. Because maybe you've made assumptions about this and it's not. And they might be doing some amazing things that are in entrepreneurial and engaging in the community that don't sort of fit what we would assume people would want to do. And I know for myself, I see that a lot and I catch myself a lot. Okay? I have been involved in film culture for 9 years and do a lot with I don't know how many of you know about film culture and its activism, film culture. It's become, right? It's amazing the number of people getting certified and how to be self-sustaining in a urban model and how to teach others. Working with Bill Allen and Robin Power, I've done lots of work there. You see how when you get at that community level, and these are entrepreneurial models and really, mostly not passions for food and sustainability professionally and personally, but when you see these things that people can tangibly engage in, right? Like, how do you grow your own food? And shouldn't everybody be able to grow their own food? And while you're growing your own food, or I keep bees and teach to keep bees, and all these things, you can start to introduce other ideas amongst diverse people and say, here's why it should be important. Have you ever heard of food desert? You live in the food desert, you should live in the food desert, but you can get around it. So there's a lot of ways that, positively speaking, you can engage in your community and transcend some diversity issues by just sharing, what looks like a simple thing, like learning to live in a food composting. I know I've been involved with city composting and bringing whole communities together and fighting and acting out. When Starbucks is going to be there, if Chipotle's is going to be there, then why not be part of legislation that says over 50% of the packaging should go back into the soil? Compost, which is legislation we've been part of in communities and it's happening in New York. So I think, sometimes I think we get lost in the big thing, and it is a huge thing, which makes the small things like I thought, why didn't I know that? I am just part of the house and the other things in the community that are sustainably managed that we downplay. So I think we have to find, what's the balance of really rolling up your sleeves at a community level, getting involved in different ways and different entrepreneurial models that revive and re-establish a community, re-educate, re-empower. And those things lead to models like Bill Allen's empowering lots of people in Black communities and just doing composting. micro businesses and micro loans, and right here in New York City, right in the Bronx, right in Queens. So I think it's important. For me, I felt, to me, that's just what you do. How do we not downplay these things, right? And how do we not assume who's doing what's working or what's small and what's large, and trust that when we're all coming at it from not, we can uncreate a problem and create it by being more entrepreneurial, by not being married to a paradigm, by getting mixing ourselves together and learning how to compost, or learning how to grow the food, or fighting for packaging, or back into compost. I mean, there's a lot of ways. So I don't have the answer either, and I think it's a huge problem. And I work, as I said, professionally at a very large scale, sustainability-wise, and the corporate level. But I think we have to be wise about what does it really look like to be part of a solution, and be sure it's balanced with not being also part of judgment.
Yeah, so I'm wondering where we shifting into.
Yeah, so I just want to say, so I think now the story, I guess
Forget it,
before we
Drew.
do that, I want to say that I agree with a lot of things that were said here. I think, of course, it's a huge problem, but I think what was really important to me in creating this moment, where the way that was, here we are, was to sort of come to a room and be human together in a really different way. It's true, we have these conversations, I've had these conversations many times, but I haven't had this conversation in the same way, and what I wanted to really encourage was not the problem not out there, but the problem as it exists in here, in order to then move to the person next to you and come up with something, and the person next to that and come up with something, and that it's important to sort of look into all of our hearts first and find humanity together, because I think a lot of what the gentrification has done to us has a lot to do with dehumanizing large sectors of all of us, actually all of us, I think, both who benefit and those who don't. There's a huge dehumanizing process, and I think, to me, that's the real value of this moment, so that we can move to those other things with our hearts, as well as ideas and politics, but with our hearts and knowing where we are and what we do and how we can change them. And then one last thing, there's brochures here that we put together, which they're called 12 steps, but really they're just things to think about. So they're 12 mantras, things to consider as you move about your day in thinking about how it is that you can recontextualize yourself in relationship to this horrible thing that's happening to our city and to us as humans. And hopefully these conversations will go out of this room. You will all find ways to be involved, to join, your city council, whatever, right, letter city council, do whatever it is that is your form of movement, of change, and continue this fight.
Should we review the 12 steps?
Sure, we can read them together.
I feel like we
Everybody
should
has the brochure.
And the etiquette too.
Huh?
And the etiquette.
Oh, yeah, and there's also a little blurb on neighborhood etiquette. So maybe we should go around, taking turns until, or whatever, 12 people. Do you want me to start?
Does everyone have a brochure?
Does everyone have one?
Please take one, and feel free to copy them and give them to others.
Yeah, you can share.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So, this is the 12 steps to being less of the problem and more of the solution. 1, we acknowledge that we are powerless over the housing market, that our lives have become unmanageable, and that something must be done. Who wants to do the second one? This side is kind of quiet.
I'll read the second one.
Thank you.
Number 2, we have come to believe that a power greater than selfishness and desire for wealth is necessary to restore our society to sanity.
We must make a decision to use our privileges to everyone's advantage, be a good citizen, and understand the needs of others in this city.
We must make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves to see our complicity and do our best to reverse it.
We admit to ourselves and to another human being that the exact nature of our law.
We must be entirely ready to remove all of the defects of character that are rooted in the colonizer mentality. and that detrimentally affect low-income people of color.
Second, we humbly demand our public servants actually affordable and more rent stabilized housing.
We will be taking names and kicking ass until we get it.
We will acknowledge and make direct contact with people in our neighbourhoods who are different from us wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others.
We will continue to take personal inventory, work to overcome self-interest as our sole motivator, and generally strive to be decent.
We will seek through reflection and observation of our surroundings to improve conscious contact with our neighbors and acknowledge the presence of neighbors.
Having woke to the reality of the modern day housing crisis and the marginalization of poor people, and having decided to not be an asshole as a result of these steps, we will carry this message to gentrifiers and practice these principles of decency in all our affairs.
Thank you.